Greetings and welcome back to Scriptures Unlocked. In the previous presentation, we looked at a number of testimonies in the Scriptures that tells us that Jesus is the Son of God. However, Jesus is not merely the Son of God, because the Scriptures also refer to him as the only begotten Son of God. This video will be detailed as usual and will provide the necessary evidence so that the viewers can make an informed decision as to what is the truth. Therefore, this presentation will answer the following questions. How is Jesus the Son of God? What does the Scripture mean when it refers to Jesus as the only begotten Son of God? And finally, was Jesus begotten or created? At this time, I'll be sharing my screen so that we can look at the scriptural evidence and go to the presentation as usual. So let me share my screen so that we can follow along. It was clearly established previously that Jesus is the Son of God and not God the Son, and that his equality with the Father was based on the fact that God was his Father. This can be proven by a statement that was made by the Jews in John chapter 5, when Jesus healed a man that was impotent for 38 years. The scriptures tell us, reading from John 5, verse 8, Jesus said unto him, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was a Sabbath. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Jesus answered them, My Father worketh hitherto, and I work. Therefore the Jews sought the more to kill him, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, but said also that God was his Father, making himself equal with God. The Jews' hypocrisy can be clearly seen in John 8, verse 41, when they stated, and I quote, We have one Father, even God, end of quote. But they did not see that by their own logic, they too were making themselves equal with God, because they were saying that God was also their Father. Friends, when Jesus referred to God as his Father, or as my Father, the Jews understood that to mean he was claiming divinity, and thereby making himself equal with God. This was indeed a correct assessment of what Jesus stated, because if God the Father is divine, and he most certainly is, then his Son must also be divine. Jesus is equal with God because he is the Son of God, and therefore inherits his Father's divine nature. Jesus' divinity gives him equality with God, because his divinity is based on his sonship, my friends, and that is his relationship to his Father. Again, my friends, this presentation will answer the following questions. Was Jesus begotten or created? How is he the Son of God? Does the scripture reveal to us the answer to such questions? The scripture is absolutely clear, my friends, and it does answer those questions. The Bible reveals that there are many sons of God. In Job 38, verse 4 and verse 7, angels are called the sons of God. This is what the verses say. And this was God speaking to Job. Where was thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Verse 7 is what you will call Hebrew parallelism, where a thought is expressed using two separate words meaning the same thing. So in this verse, God is saying that the morning stars are also called the sons of God, and God was referring to the angels. 2, Adam was also called the son of God. In tracing Jesus' genealogy, Luke goes all the way back to our first parent in Luke 3, verse 38. And he says, which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. So Luke is telling us that Jesus' genealogy can be traced right back to Adam, because Jesus is rightly called the Son of Man as well. The third group of people that are called sons of God are believers in Christ. This can also be proven by a number of texts, namely John 1, verse 12. But as many as received him, To them gave he the power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Romans 8:14, for as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. 1 John 3 verse 1 tells us this. Behold, what manner of love the Father bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it kneweth him not. Therefore, the scriptures are quite clear that the angels and Adam are sons of God by creation, while believers are sons of God through the process of adoption. And you can see this in Galatians 4 verse 4 to 6, which states, when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons, God had sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. How is Jesus Christ then the Son of God? What category does Jesus fall in? The answer to these questions is found in the golden text of all Scripture. And it is the one verse that sums up the entire gospel and shows us God's love for humanity. This is simply because the extent and measure of God's love, my friends, is revealed in the person he gave. God's love and the extent of God's love is clearly seen in the person he gave. John 3:16, everyone knows this text, clearly states, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. This verse tells us that Jesus is the only begotten Son of God, the Father. Therefore, Jesus is in a category and class all by himself, because he is not like the angels who were created, and neither is he like us, fallen humanity, who are adopted. But Jesus is the only begotten Son of God, the Father. Friends, the scriptures are absolutely clear that Jesus is the only begotten Son of God. And if there is still any doubt, let's answer this question. Who was Jesus begotten of? John 1:14 provides us with a very precise answer. And the Word, who is Jesus, was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Ladies and gentlemen, the scripture reveals and testifies clearly that Jesus Christ is one, the Son of God, two, the only begotten Son, and three, he was begotten of the Father. Friends, there are many persons who are of the mistaken belief that begotten means created. Let me repeat, there are many persons who are of the mistaken belief that begotten means created. However, this is absolutely false, because begotten simply means to be born, while to be created simply means to come into existence out of nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, all of this will be proven later from the scriptures and the scriptures alone. So begotten is not equal to created. You can see this bold, this big on the screen. Begotten is not equal to created. Let's look at some excerpts from this video entitled, Was Jesus Created?, which outlines the false notion associated with the word begotten by Pastor Doug Batcher. This is a pastor that I have a lot of respect for. However, he's clearly wrong on this particular matter. In the video, Pastor Doug makes this erroneous argument by saying, and I quote, and you'll hear it for yourself, some are going to parse and argue with the words. They say Jesus was not made, he was begotten, and he came out of the Father. They try to make an argument with semantics, that is what he said. But the fact is, and he said it's a fact, but it's not a fact. But the fact is, if there was a time when Christ did not exist, and then through some act of the Father, he was brought forth, he was created. That is his statement. I want you to pay keen attention to what he says from minutes 2 to 3, and from minute 5:55 to 8:15. Let's now listen to Pastor Doug in his own words. And this video can be seen on YouTube at the following link. All you have to do is type in, Was Jesus Created by Pastor Doug Batcher. Let me now share that video with you so you can hear Pastor Doug in his own words. So let me share that video with you.
Hi friends, Pastor Doug Batchelor here. We want to welcome you to our Friday evening Bible question of the week. And our question today, was Jesus created? Will really be part of a series of questions we'll do over the next few weeks related to the subject of the Trinity. I know a lot of folks are much exercised over this. And we have a free book we're going to make available. If you want more information, I'm going to summarize as much as I can in 8 minutes or so. And the book is called Exploring the Trinity, One God or Three. Go to the link at the bottom of the screen, and you'll find out how you can get a free copy of that. Now, when we talk about the Trinity, I confess we're venturing on holy ground, because the Bible says that as the heavens are high above the earth, so are my ways above your ways. And God is past finding out. And who can understand the Almighty? And so there are certain mysteries that we need to just know that we can't understand about explaining where God came from. But those things that are revealed belong unto us and our children. And I think the Bible does reveal very plainly that Jesus is eternal God, that he has been there always. Now, some read the verses where it talks about Jesus is the only begotten Son, and they think, well, that means there was a time in the remote recesses of eternity when Jesus was brought forth, that God the Father created him somehow. And I think there's plenty of scripture that tells you that Jesus has always been around, that he was not created. Let's look at what the Bible says, starting with John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, capital W, talking about Jesus. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, the very fact it says he was, it's telling you that he's self-existent. He was in the beginning with God. Wherever the beginning is, he was there, as far back as you can go. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. So to say that there was a time when Jesus did not exist, and yet he came into existence, would say that the Father made him, and the Bible says everything made was made by him. So he didn't make himself. So he must have always existed along with the Father. Now, some are going to parse and argue with the words. They say, well, Jesus was not made, he was begotten. And he came out of the Father. And they try to make an argument with semantics. But the fact is that if there was a time when Christ, Jesus, did not exist, and then through some act of the Father, he was brought forth, he was created. That's all you can say. You can't change the words and try to say, well, begotten is different than being created. If he's brought forth by the Father, if he goes from being non-being to being by an act of the Father, he's created. And so that would mean that he's a creature and he's not the creator. That's a very important point. Then there'll be people who look at Proverbs 8. Let me read this to you. Proverbs 8, and I'm going to read verse 22 to 25. They believe this is a prophecy speaking about Jesus. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his ways, before his works of old. I have been established from everlasting, from beginning, before the earth was ever an earth. When there was no depths, I was brought forth. They're saying, see, he was from everlasting, but it says that he was brought forth. They say this is about Jesus. Keep reading. When there were no fountains abounding with waters, I'm in Proverbs chapter 8, verse 25. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was brought forth. Why, he had not made the earth or the fields or the primal dust of the world. So it's saying that Jesus was brought forth before the world was created. This song is not a proverb. It's in the book of Proverbs, but it's one of the songs of Solomon. Starts with verse 8. Has nothing to do with Jesus being brought forth. It is a metaphor for wisdom, the whole thing. Let's just look at some of the examples in here. Proverbs 8, verse 1, does wisdom cry out and understand, lift up her voice, she takes her stand on the top of the hill. The whole thing is talking about wisdom and the importance of wisdom. And you just go to some of the following verses. Verse 12, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence. I find out knowledge and discretion. Go to verse 14, counsel is mine, sound wisdom, I am understanding, I have strength. This is just a soliloquy. It's just a song of Solomon dealing with wisdom and the importance of wisdom. Wisdom was brought forth in the very beginning. It's not talking about Jesus. And so that's one of the arguments that I've heard before. But really, to say that Jesus was begotten or meaning born. Begotten doesn't mean that. Begotten simply means that when Christ was incarnate, the only time God was begotten is in the incarnation in Jesus. And that was when God became a man. The Son of God laid aside his divinity and became a man. To say that there was a time when he didn't exist and then suddenly he did exist, he's a creature. Now here's the problem. A creature cannot die for the creation. The only one who can die for the creation is the Creator. And Jesus is the Creator. I'll close with this one.
Okay, my friends. So you have heard excerpts from the video. And in part of the video, he accuses people of trying to change the meaning of the word begotten. And he said that begotten doesn't mean to be born. But I will prove in this presentation that begotten means exactly to be born. And some of the arguments made by Pastor Doug is really a fallacy, as will be proven in this presentation. So let's go back to the study notes. Let's now look at the scriptural evidence, which proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that begotten simply means to be born. Friends, to truly understand the meaning of a word, then all that is required is simply to look at how it's used in various verses and examine the context in which it is used. Friends, there really should not be any controversy surrounding the word begotten. But sadly, the meaning of the word can and will change depending on who you ask. Some scholars have claimed that begotten, when used of Jesus, means unique, special, or even one of a kind. But it will be categorically proven that begotten actually means to be born. According to the Oxford Dictionary, begotten is used especially of a man and means to bring a child into existence by the process of reproduction. Synonyms include father, sire, reproduce, and bring into being. In other words, begotten simply means brought into existence by a parent. This meaning cannot be any clearer. Once again, words have meaning. You've heard me say that time and time again. Words have meaning. So let's continue to prove all things by doing a study of the word begotten, which appears only 24 times in 24 verses of the King James Version. Friends, beget is the present tense, begat is the past tense, and begotten is the past participle of the word beget. Before looking at the word begotten itself, it is important to see how the word beget is used in the scriptures. The word beget occurs only 10 times in the King James Version. Begetteth appears twice, and begetteth occurs 3 times. Therefore, the word appears a total of 15 times in the King James Version. The Hebrew word translated as beget is yalad, Strong's H3205, and it occurs 498 times in the Hebrew scriptures. At this time, I will go to the Blue Letter Bible and look at the original language used for beget. Let me share my screen and go to the Blue Letter Bible, and I'll type in the word beget. And we'll be looking at that word. So it occurs 10 times in 10 verses in the King James Version. And it is the Strong's number H3205. So let's click at that. So beget, the English word, comes from the Hebrew word yalad. This is the pronunciation.
Strong's H3205. Yalad. Yalad.
Yalad. It occurs 498 times, and these are the ways in which it is translated in the King James Version. So it is H3205. It is translated beget 201 times, bear 110 times, born 79 times, bring forth 25 times, bear 23 times, travail 16 times, midwife 10 times, child 8 times, delivered 5 times, born 3 times, birth 2 times, labor 2 times, brought up 2 times. So if you notice all the translation, the meanings, it has to do with having a child and everything that has to do with that process. It includes midwife, outline of biblical usage, to bear, to bring forth, beget, gender, travail, to bear, bring forth, of childbirth, of distress is a simile of wicked behavior, to beget. It means to be born, to cause or help to bring forth, as in the job of a midwife, to assist or tend as a midwife. Midwife participle. To be born, to beget a child. I'm giving it the meanings. To bear figuratively, that is of the wicked bringing forth iniquity. It speaks about the day of birth, that is when you are born, your birthday, to declare one's pedigree. So let's look at some of the uses of this word, beget. And it speaks about to bear, bring forth, beget. And look at these verses in which it appears. Genesis 4:18, and unto Enoch was born. This is the word Yalad, Irad, and Irad begat. Another, the same word, Yalad, begat Mehujahel, and Mehujahel begat Methusahel, and Methusahel begat Lamech. So it's speaking about fathers having children being born to them. Jeremiah 17 verse 11, as a partridge sitteth upon on eggs and hatcheth them not, so he that getteth riches and not by right shall leave them in the midst of his days, and at his end shall be a fool. So it's talking about a bird begetting young birds. Deuteronomy 32 verse 18, of the rock that begat thee, thou art unmindful, and hast forgotten God that formed thee. So the word is clearly talking about children being born. And these are all the verses that the word appears. I'll just pick a few verses. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow. This is God talking to Eve. And thy conception, there it is, conception. It has to do with childbirth. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth. There it is, Strong's H 3205. In sorrow, woman shall bring forth children. And that is why every time a woman is pregnant and is about to be delivered, she goes into labor and feels pain. Notice these other verses. And she again bare his brother Abel. This is Eve, bearing another son, giving birth to another son, Abel. Genesis 4:17, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. So Cain's wife produced a son, Enoch. Let me go, and I can choose any verses because the meaning does not change. And Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness and his image, after his image, and called his name Seth. Let me just page down. If you look at Genesis 5 gives you the genealogy of Adam. And it clearly is telling you that all these children were begotten. They were born. They were Adam's descendant. You can do your own studies, but I'll just pick some other verses. Genesis 11 verse 11, and Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years and begat sons and daughters. So Shem had many sons and daughters. He had many children. So let me go up to this verse, and I'll pick verses in which beget occurs. So if I click on the word beget, it will tell me all the verses in which beget occurs. Beget occurs 15 times in the King James Version. Notice this verse. Genesis 40 verse 6, and thy seed and thy issue, which thou begettest after them, shall be thine, and shall be called after the name of their brethren in their inheritance. This is Jacob talking to Joseph, his son. And next verse, when thou shalt beget children and children's children, clearly is talking about when you shall have children, when you reproduce children, and then you have children's children, which will be your grandchildren. Pick any other verse. Notice this verse, 2 Kings 20 verse 18, and of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget. Same number, Strong's H 3205, Yalad, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. So the verses are clear that beget simply means to be born. There's no other meaning to the word. It is not figurative. It is not metaphorical, as Pastor Doug would have you believe. It is simply talking about the literal birth of children. So let's go back to the study notes as we continue to make the case. So you have seen where beget is translated in these various ways in the King James Version. So friends, from the outline of biblical usage alone, it is unmistakably clear that beget means to be born or have children, and includes everything that goes along with the process of giving birth. You can do your own studies. Don't just take what I'm saying. Do your own studies. You can use any online concordance. eSword, Bible Hub, Blue Letter Bible. Put in the word beget, and you will see all the places in the Hebrew scriptures that yalad occurs, and you will see for yourself that it simply means the literal birth of children. Here are a few verses which uses the word beget and proves that it means to produce children or offspring through the process of procreation. We looked at this one, 2 Kings 20 verse 18. Thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Isaiah 45 verse 10. Woe unto him that saith unto his father, what begettest thou? So it is clear that fathers beget children. Woe unto him that saith unto his father, what begettest thou? Or to the woman, what hast thou brought forth? Very interesting verse. This verse equates begotten to being brought forth. Every time a child is begotten and is brought forth, it comes from the mother. Children are brought forth into this world in two ways: through vaginal birth or through C-section. And in both cases, they are brought forth from their mother. They come forth from their mother's substance. Children are a product of their father and their mother. In high school, I did the sciences. And when two individuals meet, the sperm of the man meets the egg of the woman. And that sperm fertilizes the egg, which is called a zygote. And after 9 months, during the process of 9 months, that child is developed in the womb of the woman. So the child is a product of the father's sperm and the mother's egg. Every child has 23 chromosomes from the father and 23 chromosomes from the mother. And that union, that fertilized egg, becomes another human being that is begotten and is brought forth at the time of birth. So the scripture is very clear that begotten simply means to be born. Next verse, Jeremiah 29 verse 6. This is what God was saying to the people of Judah that were now going into Babylonian captivity. God said, take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands. Why? That they may bear sons and daughters, that they may be increased there and not diminished. So God is saying, you're going to be in Babylon for 70 years. Take wives and beget sons and daughters. Produce children. Give wives to your sons and husbands to your daughters, that they may bear, that they may beget sons and daughters, that they may produce children, that they may be increased there in Babylon and not diminished. The Bible is very clear. These verses are absolutely clear that beget means to bear sons and daughters, and that only can happen when children are born to their parents. Friends, there are two other Hebrew words that are also translated as begotten, and they are moledeth, which is Strong's H 4138, and it occurs 22 times in the Hebrew scriptures, and it is translated as kindred 11 times, nativity 6 times, born 2 times, begotten 1 time, issue 1 time, native 1 time. This word simply means the land of one's birth, land of nativity, the place where you are born. It also means kindred or relatives. And you can see Genesis 11 verse 28 and Genesis 24 verse 7, Genesis 48 verse 6, Leviticus 18 verse 9 and 11. And I'll go to Leviticus 18 verse 11 to show you that there's another Hebrew word, Leviticus 18 that there's another Hebrew word that is used for begotten, and it means the very same thing, to be born. Notice the verse. The nakedness of thy father's wife's daughter, begotten of thy father, she is thy sister. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. So your father's wife's daughters, which is still your sister, she is begotten of thy father. Notice the words are different word. It is not Strong's H 3205. It is Strong's H 4138. It's molded. Look at it. This is the meaning. This is the Hebrew script, and it is pronounced this way.
Strong's H 4138. Moledeth. Moledeth.
Moledeth. And notice it occurs 22 times, as I mentioned, and these are the ways in which it is translated in the King James Version, and you can see it on the screen. The outline of biblical usage: kindred, birth, offspring, relatives, kindred, birth, circumstances of birth, one born, begotten, issue, offspring, female offspring. Strong's definition: moledeth, notice it is from the same word yalad, from H 3205, which is yalad. Nativity, plural, birthplace. By implication, lineage, native country, also offspring, family, begotten, born, issue, kindred, native, or nativity. These are some of the verses in which it appears. Kindred, Genesis 12, verse 1. Now Jehovah had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred that is molded, and from thy father's house. Get thee from your relatives, unto a land that I will show you. Genesis Numbers 10:30. And he said unto him, I will not go, but I will depart to mine own land and to my kindred. So he was going back to his land of birth. Notice Esther 2, verse 10. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. Esther was a Jew, but she was living in Persia. And you know the story that Haman wanted to get rid of all the Jews. One's kindred, Genesis 24, verse 7. Jehovah, God of heaven, which took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and which spake unto me, and that sware unto me, saying, unto thy seed will I give this land. He shall send his angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife unto my son from thence. So the scriptures are very clear, my friends, that it means to be born. In this case, moledeth means the place where you are born. Look at this one, plural circumstances of birth. Figurative of origin of Jerusalem. Notice this verse, Ezekiel 16, verse 3. And say, thus saith the Lord Jehovah unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother was an Hittite. The verses are very clear. Female offspring, one born. I looked at Leviticus 18, verse 11 before. Look at Genesis 4, verse 6. I looked at that earlier. And thy issue which thou begettest after them shall be thine, and shall be called after the name of their inheritance, after the name of their brethren in their inheritance. So the scriptures are very clear, my friends. The word begotten or beget simply means to be born. There's no going around that. Let's continue. There's also another Hebrew word that is translated as begotten, and it is yatsah, which is Strong's H 3318. This word occurs 1,069 times in the Hebrew scriptures, and it means to go out, to come out of, to be brought out or brought forth. And you can see Judges 8, verse 30, which uses the word yatsah, Strong's H 3318. This is the rendering of the verse. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body, begotten, for he had many wives. So Gideon had 70 sons of his own body, of his own seed, begotten, for he had many wives. Friends, the scriptures are very clear. Having clearly established that beget means to be born in the Old Testament, let's now turn to the New Testament and see if the meaning is consistent. The Greek word translated as only begotten in John 3:16 is monogenes, which is Strong's 3439. And it is derived from two root words, monos, which is Strong's G 3441, and ginomai, Strong's G 1096. It is translated as only begotten 6 times, only 2 times, only child 1 time, and means only born, that is soul only. Let's go back to the original language to look at the meaning of monogenes. So we're going to see if this word is consistent to mean born in the New Testament as it is used in the Old Testament. So we're going to go to John 3:16, the golden text of all scriptures. And we're going to look at the word that is translated as only begotten. So for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Only begotten is Strong's G 3439. Let's look at it. It is pronounced this way.
Strong's G 3439, monogenes. Monogenes.
Monogenes. And it comes from 2 Greek words, monos and ginomai. Let's look at monos. We looked at this earlier in one of the previous presentations when Jesus said, "This is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only, that is monos, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent." It's the same word, monos. This is the pronunciation.
Strong's G 3441, monos.
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 And it means alone, only alone by oneself. So monos, one of the words that makes up monogenes, the other word is ginomai. This is the pronunciation.
Strong's G 1096, ginomai. Ginomai.
Ginomai. And notice the meaning of ginomai. To become, that is to come into existence, begin to be, receive being. So when a child is begotten, that child comes into existence. That child receives being, receives life. To become, that is come to pass, happen, and this is speaking of events. To arise, appear in history, come upon the stage, of men appearing in public, to be made, finished, of miracles to be performed, wrought, to become, be made. And this is the same word that is used in Galatians 4 verse 4, when it says, "In the fullness of time, God sent forth his son, born of a woman, or made of a woman." The word made is ginomai, but it should actually be translated as born of a woman, born under the law. So let's go back to monogenes. So monogenes simply means single of its kind, only. Used of only sons or daughters, viewed in relation to their parents. Because if you have an only begotten child, it is in relation to their parent. It is used of Christ, denotes the only begotten Son of God. Notice Strong's definition. Monogenes from Strong's G 3441. Only born, that is soul, only begotten child. And this verse is used in a number of ways. This is Thayer's Greek lexicon. Look at this verse in which, so it says to be one's only son or daughter. Judges 11:34. And Jephthah came to Mizpeh unto his house, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances. And she was his only child. Beside her, he had neither son nor daughter. So Jephthah had only one daughter. And we can see that the word monogenes means only born. So it still means born, to be born. It is the only child that is born to a parent. So the word is still consistent in the New Testament as it was in the Old Testament. But we're going to look at some verses in which monogenes appears. It appears only 9 times in the New Testament. And we'll look at all 9 references and the context in which it is used to see what is the meaning of the word monogenes. So let's go back to our study notes. Let me share my screen. So monogenes occurs only 9 times in the New Testament. John uses it 5 times. Luke uses it 3 times, and Hebrews use it only once. 4 of these occurrences relate to other persons, while the other 5 refers to Jesus Christ as the only begotten Son. Friends, let's now look at the 4 instances where monogenes is used of other persons first. And this will help us greatly in clearly identifying the true meaning of the word when it is used to refer to Jesus Christ as the only begotten Son. The 4 places in the New Testament where monogenes, Strong's G 3439 appears, which refers to other individuals, are as follows. I'll go through these verses and then I'll show you the original language to show you that it is monogenes. The first place in which monogenes appears in the New Testament is in Luke 7, verse 12. And this is what the verse says. Now, when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and much people of the city was with her. Friends, the word begotten is not in this verse in our English Bibles, but the word translated as only is the Greek word monogenes. I will show you that later on. And monogenes, again, is the Strong's number G3439. This is precisely why it is always good to consult the original language of the scriptures, because the word begotten is not in this verse. The word begotten, the English word begotten, is not in this verse. But the word translated as only is the Greek word monogenes, which means begotten, which I just showed. So it is always good to consult the original languages, because when you are translating from one language to another, certain things are always going to be lost in translation. So it is always good to go back to the original languages. Luke, my friends, is clearly telling us that the dead man was the only child born to his mother, and that she was a widow in a patriarchal society. The son of the widow at Nain was an only child, because he was the only begotten of his mother, plain and simple. There's no going around the clear meaning of the verse. So no amount of obfuscation can deny the fact that monogenes means only born child. The second place where monogenes occurs is in Luke 8, verse 42. And this is what the verse says. For he had one only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she lay a-dying. But as he went, the people thronged him. Again, the Greek word translated as one only is monogenes. But most persons will not know this, again, unless they consult the original language, because the word begotten is not in the verse. The scripture reveals that this 12-year-old girl was Jairus' one and only child. She was his only begotten daughter that was born to him. The verse is very clear. Jairus had one and only child. We say in Jamaica, one dege child. The third place in which monogenes occurs is Luke 9, verse 38. And behold, a man of the company cried out, saying, Master, I beseech thee, look upon my son, for he is mine only child. Again, the word begotten is not in the verse, but the phrase translated as only child is the Greek word monogenes. The father was beseeching Jesus to have mercy on his son because, and I quote, he is mine only child, end of quote. Or in other words, my only begotten son. This clearly must have struck a chord in Jesus' heart, because he understood what it really means to be an only begotten son, and how dear and precious he is to his father. These verses, my friends, are the only time that Luke uses monogenes, 3 times. And in every instance, it is absolutely clear that the writer means an only begotten child, son or daughter, born to a parent. There's no other meaning or connotation that can be derived from the context of those verses. There's absolutely no figurative or metaphorical meaning to the word monogenes. It simply means only born in the 3 verses cited in Luke's gospel. So the dead man was the only son of his mother. Jairus had one only daughter. The man's son was his only child. Before I go to the 4th instance, let me look at let me show you from the Blue Letter Bible that monogenes appears in those verses. So let's go back to John 3:16. And we are going to go to Strong's G 3439, which is monogenes. And monogenes appears, it says here, appears 9 times in 9 verses, 4 of which speaks about other persons other than Jesus. So here it is. Luke 7 verse 12, which we read. The only, so begotten is not in the verse. Only is monogenes, Strong's G 3439. Luke 8:42, for he had one only daughter. One only is monogenes, Strong's G 3439. Luke 9:38. Look upon my son, for he is mine only child. Begotten is not there. Strong's G 3439. And Strong's G 3439 is Strong's G 3439 monogenes. So it means only begotten, the same word that is used for Jesus being the only begotten Son of God. So let's continue, my friends, to make the case that begotten simply means to be born. So the fourth and final instance where monogenes is used to refer to someone other than Jesus Christ is found in Hebrews 11 verse 17, which states, by faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that received the promises offered up his only begotten son. Son is in italics, which means it is not in the original language. So the verse should actually read, and he that had received the promises, notice promises, I put it in red, offered up his only begotten. It is implied that only begotten means a child. So this is the final time in which monogenes occurs as it relates to persons other than Jesus Christ. This verse, my friends, raises some question, and for good reason. But persons have cited this verse to support the view that monogenes can also mean unique and special, because Isaac was not Abraham's only begotten son. However, before jumping to a faulty conclusion, there is a perfectly good and logical explanation why Isaac is called Abraham's only begotten son. Friends, I'm going to spend some time on this particular part of the presentation, because this verse is used to say, monogenes does not always mean only born. It can also mean unique, special, one of a kind. But in any event, Isaac was still an only born son of Abraham and Sarah. So the point is still made. But I'll tell you why the verse uses only begotten son in relation to Isaac, even though Abraham had many sons, because the promise that God made to Abraham was relating to Isaac. Isaac was a son of promise. Let me prove that from the scriptures now. I'm not intellectually dishonest. Yes, at face value, the verse seems to suggest that only begotten can mean something other than an only born child as it relates to Abraham. It is absolutely true that Isaac was not the only son born to Abraham, because Abraham had 8 sons. Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn son, begotten of Hagar. After Sarah's death, my friends, Abraham married Keturah, and she bare him 6 sons. And you can see that in Genesis 25, verse 1 to 2. So Abraham had 8 sons. Ishmael was the firstborn, Isaac was the secondborn, and he had 6 other sons with Keturah. So why did Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17 say that Abraham offered up his only begotten son? Did the writer not know that Isaac was Abraham's second son and that Abraham had 6 more sons? Friends, the writer knew that point. To truly understand what is meant when Isaac is referred to as Abraham's only begotten son, we need to go back in time to Genesis, the book of beginnings. In Genesis, my friends, God establishes covenant with Abraham and his seed. Isaac was the promised seed, the child of promise. Therefore, Isaac was the only begotten son of both Abraham and Sarah, to whom the promise was made. The promise was made to Abraham and Sarah. Let's now prove this by going to the scriptures to see why Hebrews 11, verse 17 referred to Isaac as Abraham's only begotten son. The promise made to Abraham can be found in Genesis chapter 15. Genesis chapter 15 all the way to Genesis 21 covers this story. Notice Genesis 15 verse 1. After these things, the word of Jehovah came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Jehovah God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of mine house is this Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of Jehovah came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. God explicitly, my friends, stated that Abraham's heir will be a child that shall come from his own loins. God was making a clear reference to Isaac. Verse 18 says, In the same day, Jehovah made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Kadmonites, and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims, and the Amorites and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites and the Jebusites. This is precisely why, my friend, the land of Canaan is called the promised land, because it was promised to Abraham and his seed, Isaac. Genesis 16, my friends, tells us that after 10 years, with no child in sight, both Abraham and Sarah decided to assist God in fulfilling his promise. Notice what transpired. Genesis 16, verse 1. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, Jehovah hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Jehovah judge between me and thee. Verse 15 tells us this. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old, 86 years old, when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abraham. Friends, Abraham was 75 years old when God made his covenant with him. So 11 years had elapsed when Ishmael was born. But Abraham thought that Ishmael was a promised child. But notice what God says. My thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are my ways your ways, saith Jehovah. Isaiah 55 verse 8. After another 13 years, God appeared to Abram again, as can be seen in Genesis 17, reading from verse 1 onwards. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, so he was now 99 years old, Jehovah appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect. Verse 7 says, And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed, after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. So friends, after a period of 24 years, God was now more specific in his promise to Abraham. Pay keen attention to his words and Abraham's response below. Reading from verse 15. And God said unto Abram, notice these words, As for Sarai, thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. We pronounce it as Sarah, but that's the correct pronunciation, Sarah. And I will bless her and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. So God was not talking about Ishmael. Ishmael was never who God had in mind to be the child of promise. That is why God said, I will bless her and give thee a son also, because Abraham tried to preempt God when he got a son by Hagar. So God said, I will give thee a son also of her, Sarah, and she shall be a mother of nations. Notice verse 17. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed. And incidentally, Isaac, his Hebrew name is Yitzhak, and it means laughter. Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto God, notice what Abraham said, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. So it is clear, my friends, that Abraham was still of the view that Ishmael was a promised heir, but the Almighty had another son in mind. Verse 19 says, and God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. And notice these words, 12 princes shall he beget, or 12 princes or 12 sons shall he produce. Beget means to be born. So Ishmael was going to have 12 sons, and I will make him a great nation. But God is continuing, my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. It is absolutely clear from these verses, my friends, that Isaac was the promised seed, not Ishmael or any other of Abraham's sons. God stated categorically that he will establish his covenant with Isaac, Abraham and Sarah's only begotten son. Abraham and Sarah had only one begotten son that was born to them. Isaac was that promised child. This is precisely what the author of Hebrews had in mind when Isaac was referred to as Abraham's only begotten son, because Abraham and Sarah had no other children together, only Isaac. Genesis 18 also gives further insight into God's promise to Abraham and Sarah. Verse 9 says, and they said unto him, this is when Jehovah, who is actually his son, along with two angels, went to visit Abraham because they were on their way to Sodom to destroy. Genesis 18. But the Bible calls the son who speaks for the father Jehovah, because every child bears their father's name. And God, it says Jehovah appeared, and Jehovah is the name of the Father. But the Bible is also very clear that no man had seen God at any time. So it was actually the Son of God that appeared to Abraham. And they said unto him, where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, that is in 9 months' time. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it. So the promise was also made to Sarah in Sarah's hearing. Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So Sarah had passed childbearing age a long time ago, because Sarah was now 89 years old. She was 90 when Isaac was born. Notice verse 12. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And Jehovah said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? And notice what God said, is anything too hard for Jehovah? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. The time of life, again, as it relates to children being born, is 9 months. That is the gestation period. Friends, then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, nay, but thou didst laugh. My friends, Paul also wrote about Isaac, the seed of promise, in Romans 9, reading from verse 7. This is what Paul wrote. Neither, because they are the seed of Abraham, are they all children, but in Isaac shall thy seed be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, like Ishmael and the other sons that Abraham had. These are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. Notice, Paul understood. Paul said the children of the promise are counted for the seed. And notice verse 9. For this is the word of promise. At this time will I come, and Sarah shall have a son. So it is clear that the child of promise was Isaac. And that is why the writer of Hebrew said that Abraham offered up his only begotten, his only son Isaac. The promise was fulfilled in Genesis 21, exactly as God had foretold. Genesis 21, verse 1. And Jehovah visited Sarah, as he had said, and Jehovah did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. Promise made, promise kept. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him. There it is. Abraham's son was begotten unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. So the only begotten son of Abraham and Isaac, and of Abraham and Sarah, was Isaac. Verse 5. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God had made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age, or I have begotten him a son in his old age. Paul also mentions that Isaac was a child of promise in Galatians 4, 22 to 28. And this can be compared with Genesis 21, verse 9 to 14. Read those verses, my friends. Therefore, it is absolutely clear and not in any doubt whatsoever that monogenes always refers to a literal child that is born to a parent. However, when the same monogenes is used in reference to Jesus Christ, then all of a sudden, persons start changing the meaning of the word to suit their own false narrative and man-made traditions. Trinitarians who continue to claim and insist that Jesus is not the literal Son of God are being intellectually dishonest. Yes, I will say it. They are being intellectually dishonest because they know that if they were to be honest and accept the truth about monogenes, then the Trinity doctrine will collapse upon itself. Simply because the Trinity doctrine maintains that Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are co-eternal, which means they have always existed together. My friends, if Trinitarians were to accept that Jesus was literally begotten or born of the Father, then they will also have to admit that Jesus had a beginning. It is quite simple. Every child that is born always comes after his or her parent in time. There is no son that can be the same age as his father. Therefore, Jesus, the Son of God, is not and cannot be the same age as God the Father. That is just plain and simple. There's no child, I repeat, there's no child that can be the same age as his or her parent or father. Therefore, Jesus, the Son of God, is not and cannot be the same age as God the Father. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no going around the true meaning of monogenes. And this is precisely why the time was spent to clearly show from the scriptures that monogenes means only born child. We have to be faithful and consistent in our application of the scriptures, because the same word cannot mean one thing in 4 verses and something completely different in 5 other verses without a good or logical reason. Let's now look at all the other references which uses monogenes in the scriptures. And you will notice that John was very consistent in his use and meaning of the word monogenes. John uses the 5 other instances in which monogenes appears in the New Testament. The beloved disciple tells us plainly that Christ enjoys a very special and unique relationship with the Father. because Jesus is God's only begotten Son. So yes, Jesus is unique. He's special. Every child, especially if you're an only child, is special and unique to your parent. But what makes Jesus unique and special is the fact that he's God's only begotten Son. Notice the verses. Let's now look at the verse in which monogenes refers to Jesus Christ. The first place in which it appears is John 1, verse 14. And this is what the verse says. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So John is telling us that the Word, who is Jesus, is the only begotten of the Father. He's the only born Son of the Father. And I mentioned that when you are begotten, you are from the same substance as your parent. John 1 verse 1 states that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Or in other words, the Word was divine, because the author knew about the principle of reproduction that was embedded in nature and the creation account. My friends, the scriptures can make sense. Your Bible should make sense to you. Anything that is begotten is always begotten or born after its own kind. And this principle of reproduction holds true for plant life, marine life, animals, and humans. Notice these verses found in Genesis chapter 1. This is when God created the world, our planet. Genesis 1 verse 11. Notice these words. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and the herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 24, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. Verse 25, and God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and every living thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. The phrase after his kind appears 10 times in 5 verses, and clearly tells us that every living organism reproduces after their kind. Friends, the scriptures are very plain. A mango tree cannot produce oranges, and neither can an orange tree produce pear. Orange tree produces oranges. Mango tree produces mangoes. God has embedded that principle of reproduction in nature itself. The scripture tells us that Adam was 130 years old when he begat a son in his own likeness and after his image, and called his name Seth. Beloved friends, viewers, Seth, like his brothers, Cain and Abel before him, inherited his father's human nature because he was begotten in Adam's own likeness, that is, in Adam's resemblance, and after Adam's image, that is, Adam's human form. Adam was the first human. Therefore, all his descendants will always be humans. And history has proven that to be the case every single time. This consistent pattern is evident right throughout nature because God has clearly established this principle where everything reproduces after its own kind. When cats mate, they reproduce kittens. Dogs produce puppies. And when humans mate, they beget children who share their parents' human nature and are also human beings. The scriptures are very clear. However, persons will have you believe that when the scriptures say that Jesus is God's only begotten Son, then the same principle does not apply. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus is begotten of the Father. Therefore, he is of the same kind as the Father. The logical question then becomes, what kind is the Father? The answer is patently obvious. That is the divine kind, because the Father has the God nature or the divine nature. Therefore, Jesus, the only begotten Son of God, automatically inherits his Father's divine nature. The scriptures are very clear. This is precisely why John states that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was God simply means the Word was divine, because Jesus had the same nature as his Father. Jesus' divinity is directly linked to him being the only begotten Son of God, because he shares the same divine nature as his Father. The scripture, my friends, does not explain how God's Son was begotten or born, but neither do we understand how God can simply speak and things are created. God doesn't explain everything to us, but God reveals certain things to us, and he tells us certain things that we can accept by faith. None of us were around when the earth was created. Adam was created on the 6th day. Adam did not know that God created everything. Adam had to accept that God was the creator and is the creator by faith. The simple answer to that question, my friends, with God, all things are possible. Matthew 19, verse 26. And Jeremiah 32, verse 27 records the creator saying, behold, I am Jehovah, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me? So we are not told how Jesus was begotten, but we are told by God himself that Jesus is his only begotten Son. The second place in which monogenes appears is John 1, verse 18. John said, no man had seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. The third place is in John 3:16, and we all know that text. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, monogenes, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. The fourth place in which monogenes appears is John 3:18. And John 3:16 to John 3:18 are very crucial verses. Many persons know John 3:16, but some persons don't even know John 3:17 and 18. But John 3:18 says, he that believeth on him, that is the Son, the only begotten Son, is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. This verse is absolutely vital, absolutely critical, because John clearly tells us that it is by believing in the name of the only begotten Son of God that we find salvation. Therefore, my friends, if Jesus is not God's only begotten Son, ask yourself this question: do you believe on the one that God sent? If Jesus is not God's only begotten Son, as Trinitarians will have us believe, then the Jesus that we believe in is not the same as the only begotten Son, because Trinitarians claim that Jesus is not the literal Son of God. It is a role that he is playing. It is a metaphor. It is figurative. It is very important for us to understand that God sent his only begotten Son that we might have life. John 3:17 states, God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. This is clearly salvific, because if monogenes is changed to be merely figurative or metaphorical, then we are diminishing, my friends, the extent of God's love for humanity, as well as changing the object of our faith, that is, the only begotten Son of God, for someone else. Friends, this is very important for us to understand. Our very salvation depends on it. The Apostle Paul warned against this in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 4, when he wrote about persons coming to preach, and I quote, another Jesus, whom we have not preached. The question then becomes, which Jesus did Paul preach? we know from the scriptures that Paul, after his baptism, after his Damascus Road conversion, Paul preached Christ in the synagogues. And what did he preach? That he is the Son of God. And you can find that in Acts 9, verse 20. My friends, the final time in which monogenes appears is in 1 John 4, verse 9. And this is what the verse tells us. In this was manifested the love of God. It ties back in with John 3:16. Because for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. John is now repeating what he mentioned in his Gospels in this epistle, 1 John 4, verse 9. In this was manifested the love of God toward us, because God sent his only begotten Son into the world that we might live through him. John uses monogenes for the final time in the scriptures and tells us again that God's love was manifested when God sent his only begotten Son into the world. The Apostle John remained faithful to the true meaning of monogenes by telling us that God begat a son in the days of eternity, and the Father was willing to give up his only begotten Son so that we, fallen humanity, might live through him. Friends, another point that must be made from this verse is that God's Son was begotten before he was born of the Virgin Mary, because as Pastor Doug mentioned in the video, he said that Jesus was begotten when he was born of the Virgin Mary. But I will prove that that is a fallacy. That is not correct. Notice the verse. God's Son was begotten before he was born of the Virgin Mary, because the Bible tells us that, this is the verse, that God sent his only begotten Son into the world. So if he sent him into the world, it means that he was out of the world. He was not a part of our human existence. He was outside of our world, and God sent him into the world. That is very clear from the text. The verse clearly states that God sent his only begotten Son into the world, which means that Jesus was already God's Son in heaven before he was sent into this world to be the Savior. Jesus also stated on numerous occasions that God sent him, and the Gospel of John is replete, my friends, with such statements. Here is a clear proof text from Jesus himself, found in John 6, reading from verse 32 onwards. This is what Jesus said to the Jews. Verily, verily, or truly, truly, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven and giveth life unto the world. So if he came down to heaven, it means that he must have already been in heaven. Verse 30, notice what Jesus said in his own words. For I came down from heaven, not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me. Jesus said, I came down from heaven, not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me. Notice the Jews' response to Jesus' clear and precise words. Verse 41 of John 6. The Jews then murmured at him because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. And they said, is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he said, I came down from heaven? Friends, it is very clear. Jesus was the divine Son of God before he came to be the Son of Man, when he was begotten of the Virgin Mary. If Jesus came down from heaven, then it is flawless logic to conclude that he was up in heaven before coming to earth. Additionally, Jesus said in John 8:23, ye are from beneath, I am from above. Ye are of this world, I am not of this world. Then if he is not from this world, which other world is he from? He is from the kingdom of heaven. These are scriptural proof that shows that Jesus Christ was God's divine Son in heaven. He was literally begotten of God the Father. Therefore, my friends, my Trinitarian friends, let us be honest with ourselves and believe the scriptures, which is the word of God. Here is another nugget of truth that many persons may not be aware of or even know. Jesus Christ was begotten 3 times. Jesus Christ was begotten 3 times. Once he was begotten of the Father, John 1 verse 14, in the days of eternity. Secondly, he was begotten of the Virgin Mary, Luke 1 verse 31 and 35. And thirdly, he was begotten of the dead when he was resurrected. And that can be found in Revelation 1 verse 5, which uses the phrase begotten of the dead. So Jesus was begotten 3 times. Let me just address now, as I bring this presentation to a close, was Jesus created? Because Pastor Doug, as I mentioned, a man that I have a lot of respect for, he said that if he was brought forth by an act of the Father, then he was created. The scriptures are absolutely clear. Having clearly established that Jesus was begotten of the Father, let's now examine and prove scripturally that Jesus was not created. The scriptures are absolutely clear that Jesus is not a created being because he was begotten before anything was created. In fact, Jesus created all things, as can be seen in John 1 verse 1. Notice these verses. John 1 verse 1 to 3. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is Jesus. And the Word was with God, and that's the Father. And the Word was God. That is, the Word was divine. So in the beginning, Jesus was with the Father. So there were 2 divine beings before anything was created. At one point, there was only one divine being, God the Father. Then he brought forth his Son. His Son was begotten. And then John is telling us that the Word was with the Father. And the Word was divine. The Word was of the same nature, substance as the Father. And the beginning here is not talking about from everlasting. It is simply referring to the beginning of the creation of the universe. Because the word beginning, and I'll do a presentation looking at the word beginning and ending. Because Jesus said, I am the beginning and the end. I am the Alpha and the Omega. So I'm going to do a presentation to explain that. But the beginning, the word beginning is always used in relation to the beginning of something or someone. Beginning is not an abstract term in and of itself. So that is clear. And notice verse 2. The same word was in the beginning with God. So the word was in the beginning with God. So before anything was created, the word, the Son, was with God, the Father. And notice verse 3. That tells that Jesus could not be a created being. All things, notice I said all things, not some things. All things were made by him, that is Jesus. And without him was not anything made that was made. Jesus pre-existed all creation. And John clearly tells us that not some things, but all things were made by him. And without Jesus was not anything made that was made. Therefore, my friends, Jesus could not have been created unless persons are suggesting that Jesus created himself. Paul provides further evidence in speaking about Jesus as the creator in Colossians 1 verse 1. Reading Colossians 1 verse 16 and 17. Notice what Paul says. For by him, that is Jesus, were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. So he created the angels, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And verse 17, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. So if Jesus is before all things that were created, then Jesus cannot be a created being. That is just flawless logic. Paul affirmed what John wrote and made it abundantly clear, as I am doing right now, that Jesus is before all things because he's the only begotten Son of God, or the firstborn in the universe. Jesus was the first being that was born in the universe. And begotten does not mean to be created. I've already proven that. If Jesus created all things and existed before all things, it therefore stands to reason that Jesus Christ cannot be classified as a created being. Jesus is above and over all creation because he created all things. And to even suggest that Christ was created is to deny his divinity and make God a liar. My friends, begotten does not mean created. Begotten means to be brought forth from existing substance. Created means to be brought into existence from nothing. So let me repeat. To be begotten does not mean created. Begotten means to be brought forth from existing substance. A child is brought forth from the sperm and egg of their parents. To be created means to be brought into existence from nothing. Question: how did God create the world or the universe? The scriptures reveal that by the word of Jehovah were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. For he spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast, according to Psalm 33, verse 6 and verse 9. This is further supported by Hebrews 11, verse 3, which states, through faith we understand, because we were not there. It is through faith that we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Everything that was created came from nothing, but Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, was brought forth from his Father's own substance, and thus shares his Father's divine nature. The scripture says that at the mouth of two or at the mouth of three witnesses shall the matter be established. Deuteronomy 19, verse 15. We have heard from John. We have heard from Paul. So let us listen to the prophet Agur in Proverbs 30, verse 4. And this is what he asked: who hath ascended up into heaven, or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? So he's clearly talking about the creation. He went on to ask, what is his name, and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? Agur attributes the work of creation to two divine beings who clearly were in existence before anything was created, the Father and his Son. This is further corroborated by Hebrews chapter 1. So the work of creation is attributed to two divine beings, not three, as the Trinitarians claim. Two divine beings, the Father and his Son. Notice what Hebrews 1, verse 1 and 2 says. God, who is the Father, who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things. So Jesus is the heir because his Father is king. He's the Prince of heaven. He's the heir of all things. He has been appointed heir of all things. So Jesus is not co-equal with the Father. The Father appointed him heir of all things. And notice the rest of the verse. By whom also he made the worlds. So God made the worlds by his Son. His Son is a co-creator with the Father. The Father is the source of all things. God the Father is the source of all things, including his only begotten Son, who is the principal agent of all creation. Notice 1 Corinthians 8 again, because I used this verse in a previous presentation. 1 Corinthians 8, when I looked at the fact that there is indeed one God. Not two, not three, not one in three, not three in one. There's one God. Notice 1 Corinthians 8, verse 6. Paul is speaking, but to us there is but one God. And who is that one God? The Father. And notice who we say the Father is. He says, the Father is the source of whom are all things, and we in him. And one Lord, Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we by him. So the Father is the source, and is the great original, the great creator. He made everything by his Son. whom he had appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. That, my friends, is a detailed presentation on what the word begotten means. And it simply means to be born. Jesus was literally born of the Father, of his own substance. And that means he's divine because he shares his Father's divine nature. The next video in this series will address the question, when was Jesus begotten? Because I've already established that he was not begotten, as Pastor Doug says, when he was born of the Virgin Mary in 4 BC. He was begotten in the days of eternity before anything was created. Scriptures Unlocked, this channel will provide the answer by sharing the evidence in the next presentation. So subscribe and stay tuned as we continue to dissect and present the scriptural facts to prove any and all assertions. I hope that this presentation was a blessing. If it was a blessing to you, I would encourage you, I would recommend that you share this video with as many persons as possible so that they too can come to the knowledge of the truth that Jesus is indeed the only begotten Son of God the Father. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and may God continue to bless us richly as we continue to study to show ourselves approved, a workman needed not to be ashamed, but rightly dividing the word of truth. God bless, and may God continue to bless us richly in Jesus Christ.